Okay, right. So the second knowledge area, what is that we are discussing about? Requirement elicitation and collaboration. Requirement elicitation. Collaboration. This is the second knowledge area. The first one is business analysis, planning and monitoring. So under business analysis, planning and monitoring, we have discussed about all the stakeholder identifications, all these. But whereas when it comes to the second knowledge area, requirement illustration and collaboration is what it was. In this requirement illustration and collaboration, so here, once we understood the governance process, once we have defined the governance process, once we have identified, not understood, identified who are stakeholders to whom we need to interact with, at the same time, what kind of requirements management process do we need to follow, means how you need to gather or how you need to interact with the customer. So if you see the first knowledge area, we haven't received any requirements from the customer. We haven't collected any requirements or nor communication, nothing. So how to do and how to proceed further? That only the thing, what is that we do in the first knowledge area. If you can see, that's what the difference is. The second is requirement elicitation and collaboration. In connecting to that, how you are going to elicitate and collaborate the requirements. For example, if I am being a business analyst or a team, wherein we need to collect the requirements from the stakeholders, or we need to interact with the stakeholders. So this must be a continuous process. How do you do that? Are you sending any questionnaire to the people? Are you conducting any focus groups or one-on-one sessions to them? So these are the different ways of requirement elicitation. So these we call it as requirement elicitation techniques. Requirement elicitation techniques means which requirement elicitation technique are we following to collect the requirements? It's not only to capture the requirements, because capturing of requirements and all of the thing part of documentation, right? How you are going to document it and all of the thing comes under there. But here, prior to this, what is that we need to do is that requirement elicitation is what we have to do. So when you talk about requirement elicitation technique, there are some sessions which normally we follow, which we call it as elicitation techniques, all that, right? So how you are going to elicitate the requirements, right? So how you are going to manage the requirements, all these things and all everything were needed. So there are different requirement elicitation techniques we follow, as I mentioned earlier, even different requirement elicitation techniques like focus groups, group discussions. At the same time, sometimes we conduct even interviews and all everything with people. That's how generally this requirement illustration process and all everything will be conducted as a part of business analysis profile. But among all that, there is a requirement illustration activity which normally we conduct, because different ways of it. For example, if you are meeting to a business owner, are you giving a questionnaire to them, right? So we will be taking some interview with them, right? So at the same time, if you would like to know about the pulse of the people, which is in large number, right, due to the requirements and all everything, obviously we'll be giving some what we call we will be providing them the questionnaires, all that stuff, so that at the same time we will be developing some prototypes. Even prototype development is also a part of it. Right. So prototype means how the requirement looks like from an external point of view. Sometimes customer asks us, so wherein we need to provide even that to them. At the same time, we will be, above all, one more elicitation activity, what is that I can say, which will be more effective practically, is through observation. Because through observation, we get to know many things. Usually this is also one more knowledge, one more requirement illustration technique. Please mute yourself. Requesting you, please mute yourself. Yeah, sorry. Right, so requirement illustration techniques like something like brainstorming, focus groups, interviews, right? So we get to do through observation, we will be knowing all that. At the same time, developing some prototypes. All these were the requirement illustration activities, which normally being a business analyst team, we follow. So it's like a grapevine communication, I can say. Grapevine communication means what? Communicating from all the ways. That's what generally requirement grapevine communication stands for. So when you want to gather the information or when you want to understand the problem or when you want to understand the existing systems, all this stuff, what is that we do? We need to identify, we have to choose what are the different illustration processes and activities do we require to follow. So whatever the activities I have mentioned you so far, all these will be followed by us, depends on the need, right? So that business owner, you will be interacting with the business owner, you will be knowing something. Through some interviews like the focus groups, brainstorming sessions, we will be knowing about. At the same time, through observation also, we will be getting to know. But the major, I don't say it's a disadvantage, but the major difficulty is that what customer wants, what is that we understood. So there is a constant tussle different between these two things. If you see closely, especially when most of the projects will get failed because of that. What customer is expecting, what we understood. It's not what we are developing, because what we are developing end of the day based on the understanding this thing, right? So what we have to make sure is that what customer is expecting, what we understood. If both are same, obviously end of the day result will also be positive. Otherwise, it will become negative. So first point. Second, when you talk about stakeholders are not one, right? So if you are depending completely on a business owner and you're thinking of, then things would have been different because there are some end users even there, right? So everybody's perceptions, demands, expectations, all these things has to be taken into account. That's the reason why there are different requirement illustration activities, as I mentioned you. So these are the activities we follow. But among that, so there is a requirement illustration activity which normally we follow. As far as requirement illustration and collaboration is concerned, one of the major activity, what is that we follow is JAD. JAD. So this is the session. JAD session. JAD session means the full form is Joint Applications and Development Session, we call it as. So this is a session, more than a session, I can say it's a workshop kind of stuff. The major reason of conducting the JAD session is to provide an opportunity to interact both external stakeholders and as well as external and as well as internal stakeholders under one roof. So this is an advantage why we are conducting JAD session. First reason, I'll tell you. Again, I'll pause here and I'll go to the JAD, I'll go to Agile so that you'll be knowing. If you remember when I explained you about Agile, I told you there will be an interaction more, right? Did I say this, right? So interaction more means you will be more having interaction among people because the number is small in percentage. There is an interaction what we do on day-to-day basis. Every day, Scrum team followed by Scrum Master and all, everything will be interacting on regular intervals. So based on the interaction, what is that we did? What is that we did? Finally, we'll come to a conclusion. That's how generally we do. That's how generally we did, right? So that's what generally we call it as that's what we call it as interactions and all, everything there, right? So when you talk about the business analysis role, when you are talking about the business analyst role here, especially in reference to the Agile and all that, so there is a constant interaction among Scrum Master and Scrum team where they will be knowing about what is things is going on, right? What is happening or that. But whereas when you see the traditional model, again, come back to the traditional model, In traditional model, we don't have any other facility to interact with the stakeholders on day-to-day basis. Not possible. You know it, right? So because the number is large in percentage, but still, of course, that's the reason why before this, I told you stakeholder identification. So before you are going to conduct the JAT session, what is that you are doing? So stakeholder identification, you did analysis and management were also made it ready. So whenever you are conducting the JAT session next level, in the second step, you are conducting the JAT session as a part of requirement registration, you are inviting the same people here. You're not inviting the other people, right? So whom we have identified. On what basis identification we have done? On two bases. One is power, second is interest. Why? Because power equal to decision making, interest equal to involvement. So why we are using stakeholder identification? Because two different things. So one is about power, right? So power equal to decision making. Power equal to decision making. Second, interest. Interest equal to involvement. Interest equal to involvement. Power equal to decision making. Interest equal to involvement, right? So this is what general. So power and interest, why are we taking? Because people we have identified power, definitely those people will be having some decision making authority, which will be useful to them, useful to us. When you talk about interest and all, interest leads to involvement. What is the involvement are we making and all, everything comes into the picture here. So power equal to decision making, whereas interest equal to involvement. So these are the two major things. What is that we take into an account? So based on this view into consideration, under requirement registration, there is an activity which normally we follow called as JAD session, Joint Application and Development Session, where we are inviting both external as well as internal stakeholders under one roof here. Right. So our major advantage here is that you are inviting in the prior day itself. Now you are not, remember again, you are not gathering the requirements. You have not understood any business problem, nor nothing here, right? In this level, what is that require and all everything that we will be doing it later. So before that, what is that you are doing? We are inviting all the people as a point of JAD workshop. We are inviting all the people to come and attend a JAD workshop, something like right from dawn to dusk, right from the morning to evening, it will be conducted on a single day. So where being a business analyst, why are we learning? Because we are going to invite this. So we are conducting, it's like something like a meeting, right? Something like a meeting, right? Meeting with all the stakeholders are we arranging in this. So being a business analyst, why are we learning? Because this is a kind of elicitation activity business analyst has to be followed in a form of traditional model. Again, I'm repeating, right? So if you follow agile and all, you don't require, because agile is an advanced uh, methodology or a process we are using now. In this process, we have a facility to interact with day-to-day basis. So we don't have see any kind of problem in it. But whereas when it comes to the earlier days, you don't have a provision as such. That's the reason why JAD session is what we are conducting, right? So that's what the reason was. Now, who are going to involve in the JAD session is the question. So these are the different roles you can see in JAD. The first role we call it as JAD facilitator. So JAD facilitator means who is going to facilitate the whole process of the JAD session is what we call it as JAD facilitator stands for. Normally, this is whoever is facilitating the process will have a final decision-making authority. That's what generally JAD facilitator role is. Means you'll be having a facilitating authority where the facilitation process and all everything will be taken care of here. That's what generally JAD facilitator role is. This was the first role, JAD facilitator role, who facilitate the decision-making process, all that. Normally, this will be handled by the business analyst itself. Person who acts as a BA, who will be a BA, will act as a JAT facilitator. This is point number one. Point number two, documenter. Documenter, nothing but person who is capturing the notes about the discussions and designs and all. That's what generally the role of a documenter stands for. Documenter means, let's say, for example, there is an interaction we had among groups and all everything. So finally, we would like to know about what is the final conclusion we have made so far. How come we know about the final conclusions? Because there is a documentation standard which has to be followed by us. Because while we are interacting among groups, there are possibilities that we will be differing on few points. We will be accepting few points. We may be rejecting few points, right? So because why are we conducting JAT session? Because we will be knowing about the perceptions as well as the expectations of the customer. At the same time, development team is also attending in that, so that they will be also knowing about the reality, what is that customer is expecting out of it. So possible, we will be moving further and all. So we would like to know about the reality versus expectation. So expectation will also be there, but at the same time, we need to understand the reality even. So when should we know all these? This we must be knowing about all these and all everything you must be knowing before you are going to collect the requirements or before you are going to accept the requirements from the customer, all that. So for that reason, there will be a documenter. So documenter major responsibility is to capture the notes followed by the discussions and designs. What is that happened so far? Right. So there will be three things. End of the day, see, when we have discussed something, what are the final conclusions? Final conclusions are only three. One, we may be accepting, or we may be coming to a conclusion that accepted. Yes, this is what is accepted, right? So this is one condition. Second, no, right? So it's complete rejection. Third is deferred. Deferred means it is a status quo, I can say, right? Status quo kind of stuff. Deferred means we are differing on this. Both the parties were deferred on particular point. You may be require a clarity, maybe in coming days. So hence these points we are keeping it on hold for some time. So where we are going to discuss these points and all everything maybe in future. Right? So this is how generally the categorization we do in documenter. This is the first reason. Second reason for documenter to capture the notes about the discussions and the designs also is it acts as a reference document. It acts as a reference document. Means this will be used as a reference manual or this will be used as a reference document when you are giving this to the technical team, because whenever people start working on it, whatever happened, what was discussed, what were accepted, what were rejected, right? So which was deferred at that point in time, which was kept on hold. So it may or may not be possible to remember all these. Recollecting all these may not be possible. So always there must be a reason, and there should be having a technical evidence is required. Documental evidence is really needed. So to have the documental evidences and all everything, so this documenter or capturing the notes is what is needed here. This is the second one. Third, you'll be requiring a business expert. Business expert is the person who describes the business. Who is going to describe the business of this thing will be called as business expert. So this business expert responsibility is to this business expert's responsibility is to describe the business of the customer. Means whoever is the customer. So we need to understand and we need to describe the business of the customer. That is also there. So JAT facilitator, nothing but the role of a business analyst who acts as a JAT facilitator is the first one. Second, documenter. Documenter means person who is going to document all the requirements and all everything comes under the second one. Next, business expert who is going to describe you the business and all comes under the third one. Followed by this technical support team, because end of the day you are developing an application. For sure, technical support and technical requirements are needed. So when you would like to know about the technical support, technical designs of the system, right? So technical designs, maybe it could be an architecture of the application even, right? So whatever the architecture of the application, all these things comes under the technical supports. So technical support followed by the technical design is also essentially required for us when you are working on the JAT session, so that you will be knowing about what are the technical difficulties, all that stuff. So you will be knowing about the technical designs. What are the technical designs do we have and all, everything we will be knowing it. So that the architect will prepare some initial architecture, of course, not the detailed one. So initial architecture and architect will be designed, so that even though if it was not prepared, so that architects or the technical people will be knowing about what exactly the requirements customer is expecting. At the same time, project manager even involved in it. You know why important project manager role is. So because he is responsible for the whole project, so that project manager will be involved in it. At the same time, executive sponsors who is taking care of the business, all that. Followed by these observers, like the remaining project team members. All these people will be attending on the JAT session. So these are the different roles you could see on JAT. So JAT stands for full form is Joint Application and Development Session. So in the JAT session, the major advantage for us is to have an interaction with all the people, whoever are really important for the project. We are interacting with all the people one-on-one. So that what are their expectations followed by the reality will be knowing by us using the JAT session. This is the reason why the JAT roles or JAT facilitation process or JAT session activity or JAT to conduct the JAT session is something essentially important as a part of requirement illustration and collaboration. Now, here is a question. As being a JAT facilitator, what is that I want to do and how to do, right? So this sort of exposure is needed because of course, okay, conducting the JAT session by a business analyst accepted, but how? How do you conduct, right? So what is the process and what is the procedure are we required to follow? How generally this JAT project plan looks like? So these are all the questions where people need an answers for those. So that's the reason why. So this is what generally we do. These are the steps which will be involved in preparing JAT project plan. If you can see here, these are the different steps which is involved in preparing JAT project plan. Right. Steps involved in JAT project plan are as follows. What are the different steps which are involved in JAT project plan are these. The first thing is that we need to identify the project deliverables and required checkpoints. This is the first point. Means we need to identify the project deliverables. What is meant by project deliverable? What is that finally you are getting concluded, right? What is that finally you are concluding with? That's what we call it as project deliverable stands for. Means what is the final conclusion of the project is what we call it as project deliverable. So you need to identify the project deliverables first. So identification of project deliverables is what we have to do first. So as part of the JAT project plan, what is that we need to do is we need to identify the project deliverables. What must be the final outcome? See, that clarity is required. If you remember, again, I'm pausing here and I'm going back to Agile. In Agile also, if you see, before you're going to start something, what is that I said? You need to have a clear understanding about goal and vision of the product. Did I? Right? So I've told you that. So whenever you are requiring or whenever you are working on something, not only on the projects, you know it even regular. So when we'll become successful for us, when you have a clarity that what is that we want. So then we will become successful. So here, identification of project deliverables is what we have to do, right? So what are the different deliverables? What deliverables we want to achieve finally is what we will be knowing first. That's what the first point. In order to reach to that project deliverables and all, what are the required checkpoints? Means what are the checkpoints? Means what are the important successful factors, I can say. In simple more terms, like what are the different critical success factors or the required checkpoints we have to make sure to complete the project deliverables successfully is what we have to do, or is what we have to see on the first level. So when you are going to prepare a JAT project plan, first of all, we must be knowing about what are the project deliverables do we have. Followed by this, what are the required checkpoints do we require to consider? This is the first step. What is that we have to do here? Second, we need to organize the deliverables by the checkpoints. So this is where priority comes into picture, right? Organizing the project deliverables is what we have to do, right? How you are going to organize the project deliverables, right? So which is first, which is second, which is third, which is at high priority, which is at intermediary priority, which is at low priority. So that sort of understanding is needed here. This is what generally we call it as organizing project deliverables stands for. This is the second point. Third point, identification of key participants. That's what is required. That's the reason why we are identifying the key participants based on the stakeholder identification we have already done earlier. We have done that. So based on that, who are related and who are required for this JAT project plan to attend, that identification has to be done here. That's what we call it as identification of key participants transfer. So here we need to identify who are the key participants. So to whom we need to interact with, to whom we need to invite. Because based on that, so because you need to meet the right, so I'll tell you the reason behind identification of key participants. So if you do this identification of key participants, so that we will be knowing about, identification of key participants we have to do, so that we will be knowing about the right person for the right decision. So we have to meet the right person for the right decision is what we have to do. This is what generally we call it as identification of key participants transfer. Unless until if you are not meeting the right person, the right decisions cannot be taken. So that is required, the third point. Next, you need to define the workshop scope, approach followed by the length, right? How much time it will be taken, what will be the scope of the workshop, how long this workshop has to be continued. All these things has to be taken care of under this JAT project plan, right? So what will be the scope? What will be the approach? What is the length of the workshop? All these things has to be defined here. This is what generally defining the workshop scope, approach followed by the length of the project is. Means how are you going to do this? What approach are we following? Right? So what is the length of the project? All these things will be knowing here. This is what generally we do when we comes under. Yeah. So this is what generally we have to follow. So what we have to do is that first of all, we need to identify the project deliverables. In order to reach those project deliverables, how to organize those deliverables should be known. At the same time, we need to identify whoever are the key participants here. At the same time, you need to define the workshop scope, approach followed by the length, right? So what is the scope do we have? What is the approach do we require? Are we following in order to reach it? At the same time, length of the workshop will also be understood by us here. Next, we need to determine and we need to conduct a pre-JAT education or kickoff meeting. Means it says something like a demo kind of stuff. You know, whenever we are going to conduct something, what is that we do? We'll conduct some pre-JAT education or kickoff meeting, isn't it? Right? So you'll be conducting it. So pre-JAT education or kickoff meeting is what we need to conduct. So that pre-JAT education or kickoff meeting is what we have to conduct here. That's what generally the first one, what is that we do? Means we don't conduct the JAT session with immediate effect. Pre-JAT education or kickoff meeting will be conducted so that whenever you are conducting, you will be knowing about the practical difficulties. Unless until if you don't conduct the JAT session, getting practical difficulties is not, knowing about the practical difficulties and all everything is not possible. Why? Because you never know what is that it's happening and why are we doing all these, right? So nothing was known to the people. So when you are going to conduct this pre-JAT education or kickoff meeting, you will be knowing it. So this is what we have to determine here. So you need to identify the deliverables of the project. You need to organize those deliverables. You need to identify the key participants. You need to define the workshop scope, approach followed by the length. At the same time, you need to conduct pre-JAD education or kickoff meeting so that we will be knowing about what are the things required and all everything. Next, we need to review the flow of information. So what are the information we have received, which information to be taking into an account, which is not. So that review about the flow of information is especially required here. Review the flow of information is especially required. At the same time, we need to determine what is the required preparation time it will be taken for us to do this. At the same time, scheduling the dates followed by the location of the proposed workshop is what we have to do here. So these are the steps which are involved in conducting JAD project plan. Because as a part of requirement registration activities, again, I'm repeating, JAD session is one of the activity you're doing. In this activity, you're inviting all the stakeholders so that you will be knowing about what are their expectations, what are their demands, what are their needs, right? So what are possible, what are not possible, to have a complete interactions and all everything. So this JAD project plan is being used here. But how to conduct the JAD, pre-JAD activity is what we must be knowing. So when you want to conduct a pre-JAD education or kickoff meeting, a pre-JAD education meeting, so there are some points which has to be taken into an account. Right? So we have to follow some pre-JAD education or kickoff meetings and all everything here. So when we are conducting pre-JAD education or kickoff meetings, so there are few points we have to be focused more of. The first point is that why are these things need to develop, right? So why are we conducting this JAD session, and for what reason pre-JAD education activities are we conducting is what we have to see. So why are these things need to develop here, and what was the reason behind conducting this pre-JAD education or kickoff meeting is what we have to see in the first point. Whereas in the second point, you need to create an agenda, right? What was the agenda behind conducting the JAD session is what we need to see. Because until there is no specific agenda, conducting this doesn't have any value at all. So creation of agenda is what we have to do in the second level. So we need to create an agenda report. So in this agenda report, we will be knowing about what is that are we doing and all everything. So right, without agenda, conducting a meeting doesn't have any value at all. So that we need to have a clear agenda on it. So once the agenda report is, once we have created an agenda for the particular meeting, what is that we are conducting. So we need to break down the requirements into different parts. This is where the role of a business analyst turned facilitator is more important. So why is it important? I'll tell you. Let us say when you are conducting the JAD session, so as I mentioned earlier, JAD session will be conducted by a facilitator. So business analyst normally will become a facilitator. You know it. Now, practically, you must be understood now at this time. What is that are we doing is, we are doing it on a single day, right? Right from morning to evening, we are doing it. So practically, is it possible for us to do all these things on a single day? Is it possible? Can we do that? So if so, are we ensuring that each and every point will be covered in this? How to cover those points? Because we must be knowing about, we should discuss right from the analysis part. We should discuss even about the design part, structure of the organization, structure of the project. You may be required to discuss about the high level and low level designs of the project. You may be requiring to discuss about what are the front pages or what are the user interface designs we need to design. At the same time, we must be knowing about what are the different security features do we require to which we require to add into that. At the same time, we must be knowing about what are the different features, functional, non-functional requirements, we want to develop here. At the same time, database connectivity, testing, all these were needed. So these are the different pre-JAD education or pre-JAD. These are the points we have to consider when we are conducting the JAD session. So all these to conduct with, there is a specific time frame is required, because practically you might be understood at this time that all the points has to be completed on a single day. So when all the points were conducting on a single day, one must be knowing about how to conduct that is what is required, because how to conduct is what is needed essentially, because all the points must be covered. So to cover all the points, what is that we needed? You need to have a complete clarity on what is that we are discussing and what is that, and within how much time frame is this to be completed. That's what is required. So this is where generally breaking down the requirements. So when you are breaking down the requirements, how generally we do, I'll tell you. Let's say there is an application we are developing. What we do prior to the conducting the JAD session, what is that we do? Whenever we have identified the people, I'll tell you that. Whenever we have identified the people, so we send an invitation to all the people, whoever we have planned, right? So how many people we have planned or not. So we will be sending invitation to all the people, stating that so and so date and so time we are going to conduct the JAD session. And so these are the agenda points. Are we conducting? Are we preparing for the meeting and all that? And so these are the deliverables we were expecting, right? So these are the meeting agenda points. These are the deliverables are we expecting. So we will ask people, whoever are attending, because attending people are not just for the sake of attendance, right? So for sure, definitely there will be some reason behind attending the session, right? So that we don't invite people just to sit and listen, right? So definitely whenever we feel that their presence required and their presence might be needed for us to know about more about the clarity of the project, so then only we will be inviting them. Otherwise, there is no point in invitation. So that is what we need to understand. So we have to create an agenda report. We need to send an invitation email to all the people. So agenda report has to be created, and we have to make sure and we need to inform them prior that this is what is that we need to do. So based on that, what is that we have to do? We need to break down the requirements. So based on the agenda report, what is that we have prepared? Whatever the topic are we discussing? For example, we want to discuss about user interface designs and all. So there will be a time which is allotted for the not more than 10 minutes of time. So within 10 minutes, what is that we require? Within 10 minutes, they have to complete the whole task. Whatever the task or whatever the discussions we had, everything has to be completed in that 10 minutes time itself. Within 10 minutes, we have to come to a conclusion. That's what the standard and fundamental rule which normally we follow. So in this 10 minutes, again, we will be dividing into two different parts. Who is going to question on this and who will be answering on this? So that has to be prepared and that has to be planned prior to conduct the JAD session. Otherwise, it is quite difficult for us to handle all the points in a single day. That's not possible, because we cannot conduct all the points, because we cannot come to a conclusion on all the points unless until if you don't follow this discipline. What discipline we have to follow? We have to follow a discipline in such a way where customer, whoever are involving in the project, either it may be an external stakeholders or it may be an internal stakeholders, what is that we have to do? First of all, we have to invite them. So we'll frame the questions first. Who is going to question and who is going to answer? So for that, and how much time are we giving? Normally, fundamentally, we give not more than 10 minutes time. 7 to 10 minutes time is what will be given by us. Within 7 to 10 minutes, they have to conclude, right? So they have to question and they need to get answers within 10 minutes. That must be the maximum time will be given. So after 10 minutes, again, we are going on to the second topic. Either you may be discussing about the database designing, or you may have a doubt or a clarity which is required for you on the previous application or previous designs of the project. So there are some breaking of requirements which we have to be focused more on. What are the requirements do we have and all everything, and how to break the requirements, all that stuff. So based on the, because how you are dividing the requirements is also important. Because being a business analyst turned JAT facilitator, you need to follow a discipline. You have to adopt a discipline in such a way where every topic has to be completed and concluded in 10 minutes time. But there are some practical difficulties that few points cannot be done in that stipulated time. The reason why I have told you the final conclusion will be of three different types I told. One is accepted, second is rejected, third is deferred. So we put this under the deferred category. Deferred category means still we require few more brainstorming on that particular point so that that can be discussed in later days, right? So that's what generally we can frame, right? So we can see. This is what generally we call it as breaking down the requirements, all that stuff. Once we have breaking down all the requirements and all, we need to provide an agenda to all the resources. Whoever are attending the JAT session, we have to send an agenda report. Why agenda report? You know, when the meeting starts, usually the human tendency that it starts somewhere, it starts for a proper cause and it will be ended up somewhere. Usually, I don't say this happens for all the meetings because it's completely depends on the person who is organizing the meeting. So the person who is organizing the meeting has this clarity. So then we don't see any problem in it. But end of the day, person who is maintaining it should have a clarity on it. So they should have a clear understanding. They should have a clear agenda. What points are we discussing? Who is going to question on this? Who is going to answer? How much time are we going to provide? All these things has to be conducted under the pre-JAT education or kickoff meeting. Means before you are going to conduct a JAT session, obviously there will be a demo kind of JAT session will be conducted. We see whether how far practically is this viable for us to conduct, right? So if you are going to conduct, what are the practical difficulties we may be facing on it, and what and how and what way this is to be overcome, right? So this we have to overcome. So that decision should be taken. So that's the reason why you need to break down the requirements within the specific time frames. At the same time, you need to provide an agenda for multiple resources, all that. At the same time, we need to find out the SMEs, like subject matter experts and all everything to submit an agenda. Followed by this, what are the different questions we need to frame, followed by the answers is what we have to do. That is what I said earlier. So there will be a specific timelines will be given for what we called pre-JAT education, JAT session. Means normally this session will be conducted for 8 hours, usually fundamentally what we do, because it conducts only in the single time. Before you are going to start the work, this session will be conducted. That's the reason why the second knowledge area is this. In the first knowledge area, how and what, how to do, what standards to be followed, right? So what procedure has to be taken into an account. So those points we have discussed in the first knowledge area. So based on that, in the second knowledge area, how you are going to gather the requirements, how you are inviting the people. And once you have identified, you need to invite all the people, ask them to come up with the agenda points very clear to them. And what are their questions and all, everything has to be posed and they need to be answered within 10 minutes of time. So that we have to make sure whatever the agenda points do we have and whatever to be discussed, everything has to be completed within the timelines of the JAT session, because we don't get an opportunity uh, by interacting with other people all the time. Because if you see, for example, business owner or a representative, right? So you may not be having an access to interact with those people all the time. So whenever you are interacting, you need to go up with a clear understanding and you need to go up with a clear mind, right? So what is that you are going to ask to them? So straight to the question. So what is that? And for what reason you are asking us to develop the solution? what must be your final conclusion? What is that you are expecting, right? So what are your vision and goal? In order to reach that vision and goal, what kind of application or what type of application or what type of solution is expecting by you? So these points has to be known to us well in advance. When you know about these points, so that it will be more easier for us to move further to the next level. Unless until if you don't know about these points, conducting the JAT session doesn't have any value at all. So if you are meeting to a business owner, you will be having an opportunity to meet a business sponsor or an or a representative only once. You will not be having an opportunity. We don't get an opportunity to interact with these people on regular intervals, which is not practically possible even. So you have to make sure, we have to make sure. So before you're going to conduct the JAD session, there is a pre-JAD education or activity or a kickoff meeting which has to be conducted. In that pre-JAD education or kickoff meeting, we will be knowing about the practical difficulties, what is that we are facing, what are those practical difficulties. All these things has to be known under pre-JAD education or kickoff meeting. Based on that, JAD session will be conducted, followed by that. So this is one way of requirement registration technique. Apart from the techniques, what is that I said? Apart from the brainstorming, apart from the questionnaire you are giving, apart from all that, what else you have to conduct is this. In this pre-JAD education or kickoff meeting, we will be knowing about the realities of the project here. So that we come to a conclusion here. Based on that, how and what to move further and all will be decided accordingly. So based on this, we have to classify the requirements. So this requirements classification of requirements are as follows. What are requirements classification? First point, business requirements. Second, stakeholder or end user requirements. Stakeholder or end user requirements. Next, solution requirements, transitional requirements. Next, regulatory requirements. So these are the classification of the requirements: business requirements, stakeholder or end user requirements, next solution requirements, transitional requirements, followed by regulatory requirements. So business requirements always focuses on business goal, vision, strategy, etc. All these things comes under business requirements. Like what is the business goal? What is the business vision? Right? So what strategy are we required to follow? All these things comes under business requirements. This is the first point. Second, stakeholder or end user requirements. What end user wants? What end user wants. This is what generally stakeholder or end user requirements were. Means who are our stakeholders? Anyway, we have identified the stakeholders. So whoever we have identified the stakeholders, we must be knowing about what are their requirements, what is that they were expecting. So in order to know that, stakeholder or end user requirements comes into picture. One stakeholder or end user requirements we have identified. The third one we call it as solution requirements. Excuse me. Solution requirements means what solution? It means what are all the features? In these features, what are the functional and non-functional requirements? What are the functional and non-functional requirements are we required to develop? This is what we call it as solution requirements transfer. right? What are the features like functional, non-functional requirements? All these things comes under solution requirements. Next was transitional requirements. Transitional requirements means how the transitional process going on. Transitional process going on. It means from as is to do be. It means from as is to be. As is nothing but existing system. Right? So you must be knowing about as is nothing but existing system. To be nothing but proposed system. What is that are you going to develop? This is what we call it as proposed system stands for. As is nothing but the existing system. To be nothing but proposed system. This is what we call it as transitional requirements. So once the transitional requirements is done, the next we call it as regulatory requirements. Regulatory requirements means what standards, policies, procedures do we require to follow. This is what we call it as regulatory requirements. What standards, policies, procedures do we require to follow is what comes under regulatory requirements. So when you are interacting with stakeholders as a part of requirement registration and collaboration, we have to classify and we will be knowing about the requirements classification here. How you need to classify the requirements on a high level note. Right, so there you will be knowing about what are business requirements. Business requirements always connects with business goal, vision, strategy, all that. Stakeholder or end user requirements means what exactly end user wants comes under the second category. Third, followed by the solution requirements. In the solution requirements, what are the different features do we require to follow? So in order to reach that feature and all, what are the functional and non-functional requirements we want to develop? At the same time, we must be knowing about the transitional requirements here. In this transitional requirements, transitional process, I am saying that means what was the existing system and proposed system. Existing system, nothing but the one which customer is having at this point in time. Proposed system, what is that you are going to develop, right? So that state of transition between that and this. So how the state of transition is going on, that should be understood here. Last but not least, you must be knowing about the regulatory requirements, means what standards, what policies, what procedures do we require to follow in order to make it more successful. So that's what we call it as regulatory requirements. So these are the different classification of requirements, which being a business analyst, we must be doing as a part of requirement registration and collaboration. This is what we have to do. This is what we call it as requirements classification all about. Right. So this is all about the JAD session. If you have any questions, please let me know on it.
In JAD session, will we have multiple business analysts grouping together and then conducting to make use of the business purpose?
Yeah, can you repeat it loud, please? Your voice is slow.
My question is,
it's
the JAD concept. I'm sorry. Yeah, in JAD concept, as you said, like we are conducting the tests and then rectifying what could be done and what is the need for the business. So here, more than one BA will have two or four BAs involved in this JAD session, and then we'll be able to conclude
See, practically speaking, I understood your question. I think this must be the answer you're expecting. See, normally for any project, you assume that you'll be having 2, 3 business analysts, right? Among 2, 3 business analysts, whoever is having the capacity to act as a JAD facilitator, excuse me. Yeah. So whoever is acting as a JAD facilitator, that person has to attend this. So remaining business analyst will also be the attendees, but facilitator will be only one from a business analyst community. They themselves has to follow all this. Even though you have multiple BAs for the project, multiple BAs involvement doesn't require much, especially in JAD. You require only one facilitator, right? Among all, whoever is right the one to manage all this, those people will become the JAD facilitators here. Did you understand?
Yeah.
Thank you. Is the question you have asked me?
Yeah, Raj, correct.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Thank you. How business analysts organize the requirements? This is from Dilip Puyal. Right. So business analyst organizing requirements, first they have to classify. I think that is what the answer I have given in the last of the session. So first of all, we need to classify the requirements and organizing of the business requirements based on, usually there are business analysis techniques comes into picture. That is what I'm going to explain in coming day session. This is what we call it as Moscow technique. Moscow technique means must, should, could, and would. This is how generally Moscow technique stands for. Using this prioritization technique, this is what we call it as prioritization technique. Using this prioritization technique, what is that we do is, we conduct the JAD session, we conduct the requirements classification, how do you prioritize and organizing the requirements. All these we follow using prioritization technique called Moscow. So there are, of course, there are other techniques even to understand the external factors impact all that. That will be discussed in coming days. That's all comes under BA techniques. There you will be knowing about all that. I hope I clarified your question. Checkpoints means what are the important points? This is from the question from Lakshmi's. So checkpoints means what are the bullet points? Bullet point, it's not bullet point. Checkpoints means what are the important aspects or what are the important functionalities or points we have to be focused in order to get the project deliverables. That is what we call it as required checkpoint stats. It's not bullet point. Bullet points means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, something of that sort. So checkpoints means what are the important aspects we have to be focused. For example, you want to discuss about the security aspects of the project, right? So what kind of aspects we have to consider, right? So is it something relating to the for the user ID password or something entry-level security you're talking about? Are we talking about the security, talking about the firewalls protection of the application in order to get reduced of the malware threats, all that? So that is what generally we need to be focused more on. Yeah, actually my baby was sick since last few days. I was in hospital for a couple of days. Since last Monday, I was in hospital. Yesterday night, we have discharged. I think if you are getting any voice from a baby sometime, it is from my side. So please excuse for today. Who is responsible to collect all the information while JAD meeting? Who conclude all those things? JAD facilitator. That's the reason why we were discussing, right? So otherwise, there is no need of conducting speaking about JAD session for all this time. So whatever are we going to conduct right from the deception level, right from the inception level and all these JAD meetings and all has to be conducted by the JAD by the facilitator itself. Facilitator nothing but the BA. That's what the point was. So hence we are the one who is doing all that stuff. Of course, there will be a facilitator and all, everybody, but we'll be the one who will be looking after all that. Yes, these slides, as I told you, I think if you remember, in the Word document itself, I'm pasting it all the slides and I'm sending it to you. The same thing I do now even, right? So whatever you can see this, right? So this one, this elicitation one, right? So that I'll be copying it on the Word document and I'll be sharing it to you so that you can go through that. I was worried about doing all this work as one person. So see, end of the day, it's a group activity, right? So otherwise, there is no point in conducting as a role, right? I'm talking about one of the role called JAT facilitator. It doesn't mean that one person is doing all the works. Everybody have their own roles and responsibilities. If you remember, I have already given the detailed points about the roles. Fahad, that is for your question to answer with. Right. So if it is only a role of a JAT facilitator, then I don't require to explain you all the roles of a JAT. So why I'm explaining about the JAT roles, because everybody have to take care of their own responsibilities, and no one person is taking care of all that. So did I mention anything relating to the notes and all everything by the JAT facilitator? Did I say that? No, right? So there will be a documenter who is doing all that. So you don't see a single person is taking care of all that, and I doesn't mean it there, right? I hope you understood. Yeah, JAT session will be conducted whenever you're going to start the project. Yes, we conduct the JAT session one time. Mostly we conduct only one time. Second time will be an add-on, right? So because we don't get an opportunity to interact with all the stakeholders on regular intervals, that's not practically possible all the times. So usually one time we conduct, not more than that. But because that sort of we need to have that option, right? So to invite all the people at the same time, everybody has to attend. That's not possible for one time. That's possible only for one time. So we have to do only for that. Project manager in the JAT session, project manager will see, normally JAT session in reference to the question asked by BJET, right? So what would be the role of a project manager in JAT session? See, project manager role won't be there much in the JAT session because the facilitation process and all will be taken care of by the BA. You don't see much role in reference to the role of a project manager here. But project manager, why is it involving? Because technical people will also be involving in it. Even architect and all other people were also involving in it. So that project manager will ensure that each and everybody were attended. So because we have to see, right? So project manager is responsible for the whole project. He has to observe whether whatever the points we were discussing and all, everything were clear or not. Is there anything we are missing? Because we may be missing, being a business analyst, you are focusing on the business requirements. Maybe in reference to the timelines of the project and all, sometimes you may be missing those points, so which will be covered by the project manager. So that way project managers and all everything were useful in the JAT session to attend with. If what if we join 1 minute? What if we join the project in the middle and JAT session was already conducted? Do we get notes from the person, or do we get a chance to conduct the, no, see, JAT session will be conducted only once. So I think your question must be that if you are a BA joining in middle of the project, what would be the case? So there will be a reference manual, right? That's what I said, right? So documenter will be there who is going to document all the information. So that information will be there with us so that we don't require, we don't need anything else apart. That's what I can say. So we don't conduct just because of that you have joined in between as a BA. So it doesn't mean that you're going to conduct. JAT session will be conducted either in anyone by the person in one time, right? We are conducting only for one time. That's it. Not more than that. That's enough.
So, Raz, quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when we conduct the session, right? And so how do we take the notes? It's like a note, or you take a video?
Yeah, documenter. Yeah, you're talking about how they are going to write down all the points, right? Are you taking on a book or a Word document? Usually documenters, because we were all equipped with the technicalities nowadays. Normally we use Word document to document all this. Documenters will follow Word documents or something. Using all this, they will be taking the final conclusions on that, because we will be having more of interaction. Understand that. There will be more of interaction here first, rather than anything else apart. So once the interaction and all, whatever the final conclusion will be prepared in a Word document format, so that people will be more helpful here. That's what I can say. We don't take it on the book or somewhere, right? Normally we do it, but normally in JAT session won't be, because a lot of questions comes from different people, right? So final conclusion we have to do. So who has asked the question and what is the conclusion we have made? So that must be the answer. So we must be knowing about that first. So that sort of thing is required. So that's what is needed even. That's the thing. So we use the Word document to do that. I hope you understood what I'm saying.
Thank you, sir.
I think this is all for today. Again, we'll meet on Tuesday, I think, right? So yeah, I think
Monday. I have a quick question. If you
go ahead.
So basically, the documenter can be the BA too, or
no, normally no. Normally not the BA, because too much burden.
Right, because the BA is conducting the JAD as well as the pre-JAD activity, right?
See, pre-JAD activity, why are you conducting? Because you don't know the reality, right? So when you cannot conduct JAD session directly. In spite of it, it is always better for you to conduct a pre-JAD education or kickoff meeting.
Okay.
There you will be knowing about the facts.
Okay.
So the facts are based on the facts. See, for example, before you are going to attend for an interview, what is that you do? You attend for a mock interview, right? Why are you doing it? So when you attend for a mock interview, you will be assessing yourself first. Second point, within the specific timelines, are you capable enough to handle it or not? What are your drawbacks? You will be knowing about this. Am I right? As an example, I'm taking it, right? 100% not to the extent possible. So the same way, before you're going to conduct the JAT session, what is that you have to do? First of all, you must ensure whether is it going in the right way or not. In order to do that, what is that we have to do? First of all, you need to conduct the pre-JAT education or kickoff meeting. Make sure based on that you can go further.
Okay.
That's what you can do. So documenter will also be a separate person. It will not be a person as a BA, because it will be a too much burden to discuss. And the documents will be used as a reference even, because in future, whenever we are working on the project, it's used as a reference document to us. That's what I say.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay then, right? So we'll meet again on Tuesday and we discuss about the remaining points as well. Thank you then. Bye.
All right. Thank you.